What can you do when you're feeling fearful and anxious? I'm Amy from the Lakes, and today we're taking a look at Mark chapter 4, and I'd encourage you to read the whole chapter. The other night, I was lying awake in bed, and I couldn't stop my brain from playing out all of these horrible scenarios, right? And I was laying there feeling really anxious and uncertain. Have you ever had an experience like that? When your brain is just overworking and you know that you're supposed to give all of your cares to Jesus, but what do you do in that moment? And how do you get peace? How do you experience the peace that Jesus offers? You know, we've all had these times when we feel afraid, anxious, worried, uncertain as how to proceed or what to do in different situations. You know, Jesus' disciples experienced similar things as well. Today in Mark chapter 4, we're going to look at towards the end of the chapter an experience that they had with Jesus. And it says in verse 35, "That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, 'Let's go over to the other side.' Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, just as he was, in the boat. There were also other boats with them. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, 'Teacher, don't you care if we drown?' He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, 'Quiet, be still.' Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, 'Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?' They were terrified and asked each other, 'Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him.'" Now, you've probably heard this story before, and probably had an experience where you think, "Man, if only Jesus would show up in my brain and tell it to be quiet and calm the storm that's going on inside of me." And as I read this, I was reflecting on it, and I thought, why is it that Jesus asked the disciples about their faith? I mean, he had just been teaching them, and they clearly believed that he was the Messiah by this point. Well, what was it that they didn't believe? And I think it's this. The disciples, they didn't come to Jesus asking for help. They didn't come to Jesus asking for direction or clarification as to how to handle the situation. But rather, they came to Jesus with an accusation saying, "Don't you care if we drown?" You see, their fear really is what betrayed them. It showed that they didn't trust Jesus to be able to help them in that situation. It showed that their fear had won. You know, the other night when I was having those anxious thoughts and a worry was clouding my head, it took me a while to realize that I had completely forgotten to ask for Jesus' direction in the situation. You know, when we rely on our own abilities to discern a situation, when we are like the disciples, just stuck in our own worry and our own storm, sometimes we forget that Jesus is right there, willing to help us, and that he will give us direction if we ask for it. How do we handle tricky situations? How do we handle anxious thoughts? We ask Jesus for help. In the midst of the storm, he'll rise up and come to our aid.